Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 5, episode 4. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week I have another conversation with a Canadian who actually doesn't live that far away from last week's guest. Tia is a single mother of 2 boys. She has misophonia, and one of her sons has it too. Between Tia's misophonia, PTSD, and the brother who sometimes triggers the other boy on purpose, it can be quite a lively time at home. We get into how Tia deals with her own misophonia, how it informs how she tries to help her son, and especially in the context of multiple other parallel issues. Tia has been listening to the podcast and has found it really helpful in learning about her own experiences. If you've been enjoying the show, please give it a very quick rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. It actually helps Apple's algorithm put it in front of more people. Don't forget, you can listen on the Misophonia app on iOS or Android as well. There's also background relaxation sounds in there, a journal to record your experiences, as well as tons of news, links, research, and resources. Now, here's my conversation with Tia. Just a quick note that the audio in some places was a little unclear, I think just due to a phone being part of the connection. But most of it's great, and I hope you still enjoy. Well, I'll say, Tia, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So I guess, we were kind of talking a little bit about where you're located. Do you want to, tell folks kind of roughly where in the world you are?
Yeah, I'm in Ontario, Canada. Just in a little farm town. A lot of dairy farmers and fields around where I am.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, just earlier today, I was talking to somebody in London, Ontario, and I grew up in Ottawa, Ontario, and I went to Waterloo, so it's looks like an Ontario themed day.
Well, about just under an hour from Ottawa, so pretty close.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. Nice. So, I guess and when you had contacted me earlier, again we were just talking. It's actually your son who's got misophonia. Is that correct? It's less.
Yeah. Well,
I
do for sure, big time.
Okay.
And I have from early on. I came across your podcast. Well, I listen to a lot of podcasts with my work and stuff. And I with to help my son, he also has the same thing, and I felt bad, and I was trying to do some research into figuring how I can help him, especially at a young age, kind of try to get on sooner than later, and came across your podcast and started listening and related to a lot of it. So it basically started with just trying to get more info to help him.
And how
because
old is
I
he?
sympathize. He's 9.5.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's young, an older brother, and doesn't seem to have those problems at all. So it's always interesting to see how and where it comes out.
Yeah, that's interesting. On many levels, because it's especially for your son, the sibling who doesn't have it, because you've got 2 generations that have it, and somehow he does not. You would think that it would somehow. Well, I don't know. Nobody knows how exactly this stuff works, but you would think that it would somehow percolate into his mind. This is really interesting because I get every so often I get parents asking about misophonia. So I'm really interested to hear. I want to hear your story as well. But
of course.
I'd love to hear kind of how your son's experiences and how you as a mom has kind of dealt with that. I think that would be really interesting for people.
Yeah.
Maybe let's start there. When did he start exhibiting things?
So it's I would say good 4 years probably.
Mm-hmm.
I have certain little timelines where I do try to figure out where things maybe started kicking in, and I started noticing again because I have it as well. I did pick up pretty quick on it, and I did worry that maybe it was certain things that my reactions to certain things and sounds and that maybe he picked up on, one of a quick thing that I thought of was when my kids were younger, probably when my son who has it was maybe 3 and my older son was 5 or 6, there was a commercial that would play on the kids channel like constantly. And on the commercial was extremely triggering for me. It was the sound of somebody chewing. Like, it was a very quiet commercial other than that sound. And I'd have such bad reactions to it. It kind of became a joke for my kids where they'd see the commercial come on and they would run to me and they'd block my ears for me, because I would usually block my ears myself and just like hum a song. And they're like, oh, the commercial's on. Let's run to mom and block her ears for her. Like, it was funny. But then I couldn't help but worry that, like, because of my reaction, maybe my younger one picking up on it, or if, I was worried that I kind of like helped develop that ear, which I, would feel terrible. I'm not sure how all that works, but it was kind of little things like that that made me start seeing that he has like a similar ear, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows how that works, but I can totally understand. I think every parent who's got misophonia is worried that there's at the conventions I go to, there's always a discussion of like, how much do you want to shine a spotlight on it? Like, as as parents who have it, we kind of want to, like, how much do we want to talk about it? And the consensus seems to be like not to put a spotlight on it, but if it comes up, talk about it. But we don't really know. But yeah. So he noticed you. Well, we don't know if there's any cause and effect there, but
I don't know. I mean, that was just my own thoughts. Looking back later, really is when I was like, oh, I wonder if that was like, again, just I was like training his ears or something. I don't know, but again, it was a little later on after that. Actually, as the kids got a little bit older, it's 2 boys. They're about 2.5 years apart, and as siblings do, they fight, a lot. And what really started to get me in, which is when I started looking into trying to find some resources to help him, was his older brother would purposely sound that he knew would trigger my youngest. And it was like just awful. Like, I was like walking on eggshells all the time, because I knew that if they were going to get into a fight, and especially with COVID and lockdown, we were all, home together 24/7 and irritating each other. They were just, and so there was a phase. It's kind of gotten a bit better, but like over, let's say, lockdown and stuff like that, it was really bad, where he was just constantly, either when they would get mad at each other, he'd make the sound, or he just, to instigate it, would make certain sounds that he knew would set him off. And being a 9-year-old boy who's not really in tune with his emotions, his reactions were very, well, like you explosive. Which was it was kind of a vicious circle, because I suffer from PTSD, and it gets triggered with really loud, like abrupt, especially yelling sounds. So it was just like a bad situation, where even to the point where if my older son was doing, even if it was just eating or breathing or not even on purpose sounds, but I knew my youngest one was going to get upset, my body would automatically start going into that fight or flight response, because I knew that he was about to yell, and it was like so all 3 of us
anticipation. My gosh. Wow.
So I'm still working on like I actually think, like, seeing him suffer from it has kind of made me like want to I'm not sure how to word it really, but like better myself in handling those situations, so that hopefully it'll kind of rub off on him a little bit. Like, if he sees me not reacting too badly, then or I'm just trying to figure out, like, I'm training my own brain, and at the same time hopefully it'll help him a little bit.
That makes total sense. I mean, first of all, I just want to say, like, I mean, I'm glad things are, you mentioned things are starting to get better, so I'm super glad that's happening, because that sounded I'm glad that's somewhat temporary, but also it is, I think post lockdown, it is kind of around that time when people are trying to reevaluate a lot of things. So I'm glad you're getting some space to think about, like, how you could, well, I'm glad that you guys come out of this where you're actually thinking about how can I make things better. Some people are risk going further into a downward
Yeah.
cycle. So
Yes.
that's great that
Exactly.
things are looking up a bit, and you're able to think rationally about it. That's positive for everybody.
For sure.
Um,
It also helped also with my older son to try and like, it took months, and with kids you have to repeat, but to
yeah.
explain to him that is just not the way to go. Like, I understand that you guys fight, but so I would have to like kind of pick up little situations. Like, my oldest son does have some anxiety, so when there was
Hmm.
something that would trigger his anxiety, I would explain, like, so the way you're feeling right now, although it
Hmm.
might sound weird to you, that's how your brother feels when you do this or do that, like, to try and help it, like, maybe sympathize on how
Yeah.
upset it makes him, because it sticks sometimes, even then I can relate, because all the same sounds and even visual things, whatever that trigger my youngest son, I have the exact same ones, only I'm better at handling it than he is, obviously. And so yeah, just trying to get my older son to understand the feeling, because sometimes it's like, it sticks with you for a little bit. It's like, so he's like blocking his ears or his eyes, because he's just like, he just keeps thinking about the sound, like it just doesn't leave your brain.
Right. Yeah.
Even though the sound is gone, he's still thinking about it, so he's still in that same reaction mode. And it's so getting my older one to understand a little bit that it's, you know it's not just being like a bratty big brother. It's really like causing some anxiety for all of us. That's
Right.
helped him kind of change his approach to fighting with his brother.
Yeah, this is not like after school movie sitcom fighting. There's something
No.
deeper happening
Yeah,
here.
no, I mean, I'd rather them like start wrestling and going at it that way
Yeah.
than doing these like mind games
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
sounds, and it's
Yeah.
so.
Well, I mean, the one positive thing is like at least you each have a reference point that you can talk about. Each of you have something that's causing that you can think about and try to
Yeah.
relate to. Have they have have they tried therapy at all? Any kind of like talking to a psychologist, or I'm curious if you.
No,
Yeah.
we haven't really gotten into any of that yet. I
Mhm.
mean, in the last couple of years, well, with COVID and everything, that was all just
Oh
really made
yeah,
everything really
off the
hard. But
table.
I mean,
Yeah.
and before it was still like, still trying to figure things out, but it was also just a bit complicated because well, like 4 years ago, I separated from their dad, and it was a really not a healthy relationship. So it was a lot of like changing and things like that. And I had wanted to get into some kind of counseling, things like that, but it's just tricky where I am. Wasn't always the easiest, like not a ton of access to that. And also when with kids, you have to usually have both parents consent
Mm,
for counseling and things like that. Unfortunately, their dad is not really like a believer and all that kind of stuff, crazy
mhm.
as it sounds. So I kind of just been doing it on my own right now, just trying to help them understand best I can for them.
Yeah.
Um,
Was that where some of the PTSD came from?
yeah,
Experiences
that's
and
where
stuff.
that's
Okay.
exactly
I
where
don't
it
want
was
to
from.
pry, but the
Oh
only reason
no,
why I
well,
ask is
it
just
kind of all
because,
comes together for
yeah.
sure. No,
Well,
it
that's why
all
I was
goes.
asking it, because they must have they must have witnessed or experienced, or
Yeah,
um,
yeah. So there was
volumes and things like that. Yeah.
definitely, yeah, there was some situations, that I think were, pretty, I don't know the word, damaging or
Just
unhealthy for kids
extraordinary.
to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I do think that maybe, that's where there's some anxiety and things like that from both kids come from, and myself as well. But I'm trying, over, like I said, to figure it out on my end, and hopefully that'll help them, like if I'm in a better place, then they'll become in a better place and things like that. But yeah, the for sure the PTSD, the triggers and stuff like that makes it tricky, especially with two loud boys in the house. I have
Yeah.
gotten better, but it tends. It wasn't. I didn't get much. There wasn't really any space in between when I left that relationship, and then
Right.
having my kids. For myself to, I had to kind of heal in the chaos.
Yeah,
So
I mean, and with COVID, that's just and without external therapists, this is this is a
yeah.
phenomenal. I mean, you guys are yeah, it seems like you guys are doing great under the circumstances.
Yeah,
That's
for sure. It's getting better as time goes on. It's been four
yeah,
years since we split up, and I mean they spend half their time there and half their time with me. So
I see. Okay,
it's or it's getting better, but it's taking time, years really. And especially at the age that my kids are, they're kind of they're not young enough to kind of just not know, and they're not old enough to really understand. So
right.
it's a
They're going
lot.
through. I mean, it's around the puberty age.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of hormones and stuff. So, so switching gears a bit. So
Hmm.
so at home, okay, this is the situation at home. So it's like it's been the cycle during COVID. They're, well, I guess they weren't at school in person for a while, but how is it with other friends? Are they keep getting triggered outside of the house? How are they handling life in general?
Yeah, so they're pretty good. I mean,
I mean, this maybe specifically your misophonic
yeah,
kid,
no,
but
of course.
then
So
both of them in
he's
general.
um he's I mean, again, I think it's a lot of it is, specific towards like his brother is a real trigger, right?
Okay.
And like I haven't really had any situations where he's like come back and friends have set him off or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um I had one moment the other day which was kind of funny because he was at my parents' house and my stepdad was, and all of a sudden my son comes running out because I was in the driveway. He's like, I can't be in there because
Mm,
the way Grandpa's eating, which was my first trigger as a child, was him. Which is funny
mm,
that he kind of, I was like, full circle. It's still kind of happening right there.
yeah.
So there depends on if there's it's a very obvious thing sitting beside someone and the eating thing is, or
Right.
mouth sounds. I don't know how you want to describe it, but um, otherwise, it's really more just in the house. Like his brother, his dad sometimes will trigger him.
So
I'm pretty good with.
what does he do at his dad's if he's being triggered and his dad is not very
Yeah,
understanding? Let's put it that way. Yeah.
yeah. That's a hard one for me because I'm not there.
Yeah.
He does tell me some, like, with certain things stand out by the time, like when they come back to my house, that his brother or dad kind of were just making sounds. And at this point, it's like, they think maybe like, or his dad will be like, oh, well, I'm going to make this sound until it doesn't bother you anymore, which is just
Okay.
like
Yeah.
torture for him, and he doesn't understand. So like, he's not there to like, there yet in the way of like just
Yeah.
trying to ignore it the best that you can. I mean, depending on the situation, I guess.
Is he allowed to text you or anything during those visits, or is that
Not
not allowed?
really.
Yeah.
Sadly, my
Okay.
older son does have a phone, but their
Yeah.
dad isn't really big on that kind of stuff. He also
Okay.
checks their phones, and it would
Uh,
just probably be an issue.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. What
yeah.
about how is he in how is he for distance learning, like versus being in a classroom? Like I'm just curious how has it
Hmm.
affected his schooling at all?
So he was pretty good with like doing the online. Some moments, like, because you have a techer like on a Zoom meeting with like
Yeah.
20 other kids, and there's a lot of like talking and interrupting and different things going on. But wasn't any standout moments that were too hard for him or anything like that. Even in school, like he really loves school, so that's good. And I haven't, again, like I haven't really heard too many, like he hasn't come home saying anything like, you know, um, that's been bothering him. Again, though, with because they have started back in class,
Yeah.
just in September last week they started with the way they have their classrooms set up and everything. Like, for example, like at lunch, like their desks are all very far apart from each other at this time.
Yeah.
So there hasn't really been too many like at school triggers or anything for him. I
Yeah. I'm
mean,
just
the thing,
wondering.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering now that everyone's had a taste of distance learning. There's people talking about like maybe it should just be more prevalent, like a more available option for people who have like sensory processing disorders and things like that, because maybe you're not there all the time at school, and you can have like a couple days maybe to do distance, but there might be
Mm-hmm.
opportunities for some kind of a hybrid experience for people like your son and others who have misophonia or something else that could cause a
Yeah.
problem being in school all the time.
Yeah, for
Because
sure. For sure.
like something like misophonia can, like, if you can't handle school, it could ruin your life, and that'd be such
Oh
such a
yeah.
sad thing. So
Yes, for sure. I mean, he's young, so it's really like it's kind of just I'm kind of just got to see how it goes. If he manages to maybe grow out of it, or if I can get in some good like coping mechanisms for him
yeah.
early, where it doesn't, But yeah, for sure, that would be a concern if like being around people and in schools, if that's is setting him off, it would definitely be tricky. He already is has a hard time with like he's like dyslexic and reading, and like so
Mhm.
academically it's a bit of a struggle right now. So if this were to also on top of that, would be a nightmare for him. Hopefully that's
Yeah.
something we can stay on early. But I mean, so far he hasn't like doesn't seem to be too much of an issue. It really right now it seems to be pretty like specific to.
The
I mean,
home
again,
environment,
like
his brother, and
yeah, like just where like anxiety or anger, like his like things like that kind of kick in, and then that makes it worse, I guess. I don't know if
hmm
it's like an anxiety based type of thing. I'm not sure. Again, I've had awful my entire life from even like an early child, so I'm not sure where it's what makes it worse.
there's a lot of questions. Trust me. Yeah, it's early,
Yeah,
very early in its research. But yeah,
yeah,
let's go back to your early days. Sounds like it was that grandfather. Like it is for a lot of
yes.
us. It's some older
I
generation that.
know. It's funny.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the ones I've listened to, it's always the start back.
Yep.
It's the parent, dad, or whatever. So it was my stepdad who's been in my life for most of my
hmm
life, and but yeah, um, meal time was awful. I just remember sitting there like my elbow on the table with like my finger in my ear, just trying to like discreetly block my ears so that I could stay at the table. And it was very like as a young kid was just I didn't know how to. That's why I can sympathize with my son, because I remember being that age and not knowing like how to handle the response you have miso, and it's yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's very 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 typical. That's kind of
Yeah.
maybe a good and bad thing. But um, were you and did what was other people's reaction to when they saw you get triggered?
Yeah, I don't actually have a lot of like memory of that. I don't know how aware everyone else was. I'm the oldest of five, and it
hmm
was just a bit of a busy household, and and I was a pretty shy, quiet kid, so maybe I hid pretty well, I guess I would say.
A
Um,
lot of us bottled it up for a long time. So yeah,
yeah, yeah,
whether we're
yeah.
only children or multiple siblings.
Yeah. So it's funny, and really like that's honestly my only like I was trying to think back like of other situations or triggers as a kid, and that's like the most standout one I can think of until like later in life. Like, and it was that was like when I was living at home, and then from like 18 to
hmm
28 almost, there was like a 10-year period that like in trying to think about doing this podcast today, I was like, and I couldn't think of anything in that like 10-year period that
Yeah, that's similar to me actually.
oh
I
yeah.
remember, not to bring this about me, but you never
Mm.
can't seem to um I tend to bring it back to me sometimes, but I'll just say quickly.
No, that's
Yeah,
good. Yeah, please.
it was like, it was definitely growing up. So at home, parents,
Hmm.
until going away to college. So went to Waterloo. So around
Yeah.
18 to sometime in the early mid two. Yeah, I guess it was mid 2000s when I got a job in an open office plan with a boss who just kept slurping his Diet Coke. And so I was
Oh,
around,
yeah.
late 20s. And so
Okay.
there was about a decade where I probably had it, I'm sure, but it was kind of, well, when you first get out in the world and you're free and get to make more decisions and you're living on your own,
Hmm.
I think those things all kind of help because, you're able to finally make your own decisions and kind of get your own place and whatnot. So feel like maybe that's what kind of affected the, or kind of made it less, noticeable.
Yes.
But then when you hit the workforce and then now you're forced again to be around other people. So you have like a new family
Yeah,
everywhere you work.
exactly.
And it's like,
Exactly. Yeah,
so,
yeah, it's interesting how that works. There's like a distracting 10 years or something like that. I don't know.
hmm
I was like I met my ex the same year I moved out of my parents' house. So I was 18, and
mm,
I had my kids at 23 and 26 or whatever,
hmm
and again trying to think of when it kind of started to kick back in. My first memory was that commercial I was talking about on the kids channel that started like driving me crazy and would hear it all day long. And kind of just tended to stick after that. Like it's like it came back around, and or I just became more aware of it. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but
So it
and
wasn't your ex that was causing any, because sometimes it's relationship or like people you're living with or whatever, right? That it seems
yeah,
like you had at least several years where you had no kids, it was just you two, but it wasn't
yeah,
like any
no,
triggers
there didn't.
happening.
Yeah, no triggers with him actually at the beginning. Towards the end, in the last like few years, there definitely they did become triggers.
Well,
Um,
stress is an exacerbator, and sounds like there was
stress, yeah, stress
stress.
really kicked in, and especially towards the end. And honestly, like once I left, um, everything. It's almost like everything kind of got. It was a little bit um, um, like a. I'm not sure how to describe it really, but kind of all hit me at once, and like
hmm
my nerves were shot, my stress levels were really high, and so everything. I was like very sensitive to like any kind of just noises,
hmm
and like the list could go on with what it is. Even visual things started
I was just
to
gonna
go.
say, yeah, right.
Yeah, so and
So
it
the
was, yeah.
misokinesia was kicking in, and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a mess there, but got it got better. And I also, I mean, it helps just I don't know, it's just there's so much info easily accessed out there now. I was really able to try and like research and learn and try to understand my situation and what I had gone through, and understanding my anxiety and depression and PTSD and everything like
Yeah.
that. It actually has helped me with, especially even with miso and everything. Like it's helped me kind of deal with it, I guess, a bit better, and like
hmm
I'm kind of training my body and my brain and my mind to not go in that fight or flight response for
hmm
every little thing. But it's taken
Yeah.
years, and but it has gotten better, and I'm hoping it kind of maybe will rub off on my kids a little bit, seeing that every all the work I'm trying to do to make it better.
Yeah, what are some of the I mean, are you talking about like coping mechanisms? But it sounds like it's deeper than just kind of headphones and whatnot. Um uh, what are some of the ways that you're trying to make it better? How you're working on your miso?
Yeah. So it's I honestly recognizing was a big one when I kind of figured out that this was a faction,
Yeah.
that there was a name for it. Kind of like my anxiety, recognizing it, even in the moment, kind of like, okay, this is setting me off, or um, recognizing it was big with me. I don't know if that would work with everybody, but it's and then just kind of trying to retrain my brain, or being able to distract myself, so that whatever triggered me doesn't sit in my head for longer than it would normally. Like even after the sound or the visual is gone, sometimes the feelings would still stay for
Oh yeah, you're judging
for
and it's lingering and yeah.
yes, for so. But I've gotten better with like shortening that reaction. And again, I don't know, it could be different things. Like I've been practicing like yoga, breathing, mindfulness stuff has helped me. breathing was actually quite big, like, which I learned through yoga. Like, it just breathing techniques kind of calm my mind or calm my brain, my heart. Again, I'm big on I always have my earphones on standby and put in some podcast or a audible or something like that. Bit of a distraction is helpful. But again, that's also another tricky one sometimes, because there are certain podcasts, or if I'm listening to, like, I sometimes have to take a second to see if I can, sometimes people's voices, there's like little sounds in their voice that I can't have in my ears. So I'll have to find something else. But
I'm
so,
the same way. I I mean, as some people know, I don't, not everyone knows, but I mean, I take out as many triggers as I can out of this podcast before I publish it live. So hopefully it's fairly clean. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, one thing that helps, I think, is because I always listen to everything on, like, not quite double speed, but faster than normal. So I think it makes probably triggers that I would have heard just kind of go by faster.
Oh,
So
that's interesting. I never thought of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, then it's kind of a double bonus of, like, I kind of like the triggers go by faster, but then also, listen to the thing in a quarter and like 75% of the time or whatever. So
yes. Yeah, for sure. I'll have to try that out.
No, those are great. Yeah. I mean, mindful, like breathing, yoga, and worst case, headphones. I mean, that's kind of classic. There's really nothing much else revolutionary out there that we can count on. And you said so when did you find out that it did have a name? Was it like after that commercial, you're like Googling, why do I hate this commercial kind of thing? Or
I think I want to say I was listening to like a morning talk show or watching one on TV, and I think the host mentioned it. Oh, there's a word, or like, reading little daily articles like for this, people that can't stand the sound of chewing. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I'm like, okay. And then, that just kind of stuck in the back of my brain. Like, okay, it does exist. And then, again, it just really picked up more over the last couple of years in just doing my research and on myself, and also trying to help my kid a little bit on how to approach that with him, that I learned, quite a bit more. So.
Right. And you've told him like the term misophonia and everything, and you share with him all the stuff that you find when you're Googling around?
Oh, yeah.
Does he get a filtered version?
Yeah. Well, I try to explain it to him, and I try to be like, try to help like him understand or know that I understand, and I want to be able to relate. Like, I know that this sounds, bothers you, or I try to help him through that moment. It's a very, it's a thing that people do struggle with. Like, it's not your fault. It's not your, that you want to raise, your father does some sound or something like that, so, to try and help, because it is confusing. I mean, for some, especially at a young age, I would imagine, to have such a fast and strong reaction, like come on, and such a, and sometimes we're all just sitting here watching TV, and whether it's on purpose or not, because sometimes, I mean, like my older son eating popcorn or something is just, and then all of a sudden my youngest is freaking out and yelling, and like I mentioned earlier, it's just like that cycle of I don't do well with the loud noises, and then it's just, so yeah, it's but I try to talk about it with him in the moment, so again, being just aware kind of helps, and again, also trying to help maybe like outside triggers, because sometimes there's things on TV, especially kids now, like they're on like TikTok and stuff, so they're like scrolling through videos so quickly, but then some of them come on and it's like that ASMR whispering thing, and like it's all so fast that he doesn't know what the next video is, or it's a visual something that his eyes don't like. So I'm trying to like eliminate like things like that will trigger him, and
Yeah, it's different set of challenges for kids. They're just bombarded with media now, and
Oh,
so
it's
it's hard to
constant.
kind of you never know when something's gonna. I have vibrate on my phone turned off. I just have it on silent, just because I
Hmm.
can't, I can't take that the feeling. It's not a feeling you can hear. It's not really silent. You're hearing the vibration.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, well, so what about you when you're out in the world? Like, do you tell your friends, that you have misophonia? I'm curious how you kind of handle it
Yeah.
when you're outside of the house.
Uh, not, I wouldn't, I can't really think of a time when I, have, said it, in, no, I mean, I kind of just go with, if I can avoid certain things, I can. I mean, I just,
Yeah.
thinking quickly, like if I have, you know, when we were allowed to hang out, I do have like a close group of friends that I've grown up with, and we usually, like, without COVID issues, we would see each other, multiple times a year and have dinners and stuff. And there's one of my oldest friends, her and her husband, the food thing, the eating is really bad. And like I think about it the whole day before I know I'm going to see them. I think
Um,
about it like I think about it at random times. If I even haven't seen them in a month, like it'll be like a thought that pops into my head about the way that they eat, and it, like, even though I'm not even near them, it triggers me, like as if I'm standing right beside them. So,
yeah.
but I've never said anything. I don't know. I'm not really sure how I would go about that, or and
Yeah.
also, I mean, they're not doing it on purpose, and I think it's just my own internal thing. So if I can just not sit beside them at the meal, or just, again, acknowledge that it's just my brain doing its thing, and I'm going to be okay. It's not
Yeah.
like
No,
a
that's
bad situation. I'm not in a bad situation here. It's just
right.
unfortunate. I'll get over it.
Yeah,
um
that's what I do mention on the podcast sometimes. I don't always even remember to do it, but just telling yourself that, okay, you're having dinner, you're going to have dinner, it's going to last for a certain amount of time, then it's over. And then you're
yeah.
going back with your kids to a familiar environment. That's the other thing. Like anything you're doing outside of the house is temporary. It's really just, your main life is with your kids or,
Hmm.
just at home. So, I think if your brain can kind of understand that it's not under constant threat, then maybe you don't have to tell everybody about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about
Mhm.
do you uh I guess I didn't ask, like, what do you do for work? Are you working somewhere?
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I'm a gardener, landscaper.
Oh, so you get to be
Um,
outside.
I'm outside and I'm with plants and flowers in the dirt.
Yeah.
So I'm really lucky with that. I did have
Yeah.
an office job before the kids in like a cubicle. Again, that was during those 10 years, when I was distracted, I guess. I'm not quite sure. So I don't really have many office memories of triggers, but thankfully my job now is very peaceful and quiet. I usually just have
Hmm.
my earphones in and I'm listening to like true crime or psychology or something like that all day long. So I'm pretty lucky with my job.
Yeah, that's great.
There's
Okay.
yeah, there's no
There's no going back to a cubicle for you or
oh
open
my goodness,
office,
no.
but
No,
then
I
you
definitely.
might have to share. Then you might have to tell people if you had to be stuck in a building, probably have
Yes,
to
there
share it
would
with
be
your boss.
a lot more work on my end trying to make
Yeah,
myself
you've got enough to deal
feeling.
with, so that's awesome that you're really good at work. Is kind of just probably the feel must be like a sanctuary, like kind of
Yep.
like a therapy session basically
Oh,
every day.
definitely, for sure.
Wow.
And when I first started this job, because before I started working, I I stayed home with my kids for the first 8 years, which I was very lucky to be able to do.
Hmm.
But and then my first job after I split up with my ex was this gardening job, and it felt very therapeutic.
Hmm.
It was like a big life changer for me, and it's been great ever since, actually. So it's a really good one for me. I'm pretty lucky that I don't have to worry about that during the day. I know that I'm like all my podcasts pre-downloaded, and I get to go,
Oh,
and my where I work is in a really beautiful little town, and all the houses that we have are like gorgeous, and some of them are on the water. So it's actually a very peaceful, nice job. Yeah. So that's great during the day. And thankfully the kids are back in school, so I can actually get to work.
Right.
So a little while there, I wasn't able to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty positive, positive kind of going forward, because you kind of probably had the worst situation, having everyone at home in lockdown, all triggering each other. And now you're able to kind of work on that together somewhat. And now you're able to kind of like take those lessons and kind of build on that going forward. And with everyone getting their own personal space now, outside of the house. So
yes, exactly. It was as rough as it was during that. I mean, I feel like, now that we're kind of coming out of it, we're coming out of it with a little bit of lessons learned, and hopefully, and little coping mechanisms and stuff like that. So,
although if I remember my Canadian holidays well, Thanksgiving is in a few weeks, I believe.
Yes.
So how do you guys do around the holidays then?
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's and just picturing like sitting, at a big table and stuff with family, like there is a bit of a distraction, I think, there when there's like multiple people and people are talking and doing different things. Like I don't have any really strong moments of like, anxiety thinking that I'm going to be listening to all of this. It's really, I think it's more when it's like that one-on-one, or when there's like distractions around, it doesn't seem so bad. My son as well, I haven't really, that doesn't seem to be a trigger for either of us. In the miso way, social anxiety, things like group settings aren't always but that's a different, that's different. But
so I think you haven't brought it up with your family either, right?
No,
Misophonia. Yeah.
No, not to the point where, so I actually have with my mom a little bit, because there were some days over the winter before the kids' school was closed, that I had to go to work. So my mom would come and watch the kids, and she would, see, them fighting, and my older son doing like all the sounds to trigger the younger ones. So we did have like, listen, my son had like, I would tell my mom like, like he gets really bad reactions to this. Like I don't know what to do, So she knows that he has this, but I don't know to what extent. I don't know exactly where she stands. If she just thinks it's like, oh, they're just kids and annoying each other, or that's just siblings or whatever. But
got it. You just told her that, hey, this is what happens, and he's got this thing, but you just kind of let her interpret it however she seemed fit.
Well, and I say, like you try and remind like my son, like, if they do get into an argument or something, tell him not, like, because I do remind him sometimes, not make sounds that are going to set him off. Like that's just a low blow. Like you can't do that. Like there's, I know you can get upset, but there's just other ways to, like, that's just the lowest of the low, it's a cheap shot. Exactly. So I would remind my mom, to remind him, or if you see it happening in the moment, to talk to them about it or whatever, because I mean, he would have really strong reactions to it. And I felt bad, and it really stick with him, and it would sometimes 10 minutes later, he'd be like, oh, I can still hear it. And, poor guy. So my mom does know a little bit, but I mean, I don't know how much she knows about like the realness of it all.
But she doesn't know that you have it. Did you just did it in the context of your son? Or?
Well, I said, like, I understand because I have the same sounds bother me, but like, it's just, I don't think she realizes that her
expression was just blank, probably.
Yeah,
like,
pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. It was like, okay, well, just, a little bit more like, get over it. Like, just ignore it. I'm like, if it was that easy.
I'm doing my sad laugh, you know how
yeah, exactly.
we all understand. Yeah.
Yes. So, but other than her, no, we're kind of just, if it was something more like, if it was being like affecting him at school more, if that happens, I will, open up, do my best to get that out there. But right now it's more at home, and yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so this is probably the first time you've kind of talked about it publicly, I guess. Sounds like
Oh God, yeah, for sure.
wow, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the first time. A lot of people come on and they're like, I have never like other, apart from maybe typing into a search box, I have never like expressed it at all. Then they come on the show. So
Hmm.
it's yeah, we need to get more stories out there. And your stories, it's particularly interesting because yeah, there's a lot of parents are asking questions about it who have kids who have misophonia. So I think this is
Yeah.
super insightful. Yeah, I always want to leave some time towards the end if people have things they want to share or tell people. You have a lot of different perspectives. Are there things that you want to tell people as, I don't know, tips or just kind of advice in dealing with it, as a parent and as a
Hmm.
sufferer yourself?
Yeah. Well, some days are easier than others, but like I kind of mentioned earlier, where I'm at right now is kind of just, you know, becoming aware of it again. Like it has helped. Kind of knowing what the triggers are, and if it's things like in your home, it's easier to fix or avoid them.
Hmm.
With the kids, I mean, it's so hard. Again, trying to help him understand. um, I'm hoping might help train his brain in the way to not panic in those moments. If he's like aware of that, yeah, that's a tricky. It's
Yeah,
tricky to know exactly,
you're
what the
doing it on
best
the
advice
fly.
is, or
There isn't
yeah.
right. There isn't a
So that's
playbook
good
for
word,
this.
right?
So.
I'm doing it on the fly, and it's really in those moments that I'm just trying to help him understand, because it's you know myself understanding has helped. So
Hmm.
um, and if I'll keep doing my research, and if there is something that comes up that I think might work with him, whether it's some little workshop or counseling of some sort, that you know um, help help his mind a little bit with things like that. um, yeah.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for coming on and just sharing your story and your son's story.
Hmm.
I'm glad things are looking up, and I hope that continues to happen. And I really admire, how you've been through all this adversity. I'm sure this is kind of a cheesy thing to say, but through your adversity, you've been able to really kind of keep your head on straight and try to look for the good and try to help your son and yourself. So that's very admirable.
Yes, thank you. It's very, very nice to hear. Yeah, I've gone through some darker times, and
Yeah.
I see the importance of trying to get better and do better for my sons, and try to make it a less a better life for sure. But I mean, thank you for having me. I really like your podcast. Again, it's made a world of a difference to just hear other people's stories and to learn about it. um I just, yeah, it's great. So I'm really happy that I was able to do this today. I was looking forward to it.
Thank you, Tia. Always great to talk to another Canadian, and I wish you and your boys the best up there. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. To contact me, you can hit me up anytime at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website, misophoniapodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Hit me up anytime. Music, as always, is by Moby, and until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.